And we're live.
Okay, so we are back, looking at H91, and while we're waiting for Ledge Council to return, we are going to ask, the CAPS to go through the budget that they presented to us the other day one more time. So we can look at it, and there may be some questions that we have, from folks about that, or about some of the work that they do, and that. Sam, I'm looking at you. You had a question about some of that. Yeah. So, Jenna, thank you for being here today and being patient. This is legislative time. So we have the spreadsheet that you sent last week. And I think it would be helpful just to go through that one more time. So there's some clarity on exactly what the funding is for. And how it would be used going forward in the future.
Great. Jenna O'Farrell, Executive Director, Northeast Kingdom Community Service, Community Action. And I'm joined today with
Okay. Oh, Linda Lottie with Director of Finance here at NECA.
We didn't hear your name. Say it again. Thank you.
Linda Lottie.
Okay, great. Thank you for being here. Are you going to share screen?
I will in 1 second.
Okay, so Amy is sharing screen. We'll get it up and then you'll be able to walk us through the information that we have.
Oh, she already does. I need permission. Oh, probably not. Sure.
Heidi, is this a new one?
Yeah, we just submitted this morning. It should also be
Okay,
on your available to you.
okay, put it up on the web page and I didn't put it up until I heard from you.
so this budget gets to the same totals. It just breaks it down with a little bit more detail. So across the top, it's
So Jenna, is that Jenna speaking?
Yeah.
Make sure that you are close to the mic and so that we can hear you, so it's somewhat garbled. And then go right ahead.
okay. This is very similar to what we presented. This just breaks it out in more detail. So
Oh,
at the
good.
top, you can see the 5 agencies across the top. It gets us to the same number. It's the same, and yeah, there's the end. And then it just breaks it down different with more detail in the middle. So I don't know if you want to take a second to look through it or you have immediate questions, but this just, you can see that there's differences between the 5 CAPS based on demographic, based on the number of individuals, what our needs are. So the scope of work would be the same. The scale looks different. The budget looks different from agency to agency.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Noel.
This is Noel Langwell, Joint Fiscal Office. My question is, what is statewide? I see the 5 agencies combined, so what does statewide represent?
Statewide would be the position that would be a statewide position that we then divide up between all of us.
Oh, it's a statewide position that you all pay for, or it's DCF?
That we pay for.
Okay.
So it's not really listed in the bill itself as a statewide position. We have 5 regional CAPS and
Right.
then work. So can you tell us how this will be determined? And is this going to be part of the October 1st report?
Right. I mean, I think there's another way to break it out. I think there's kind of a couple conversations, but instead of having it listed at a separate column of statewide, it would be divided between each of the CAPS individual budget, the positions. And then, I mean, we're looking at a statewide coordinator or director that would be part of the CAPS and it has like 9 functions, and the functions would be very different from the regional directors and with OEO, that it's a position kind of in between those. But I don't think we're not looking for this position to be hired by the state. It would be by the CAPS and supervised by the 5 executive directors.
So understood. Then the question does arise about how that position is or is not included in the bill. Doesn't have to be.
With the record, I think,
Okay, go ahead.
I think that we're gonna give the CAPS the money and then let them
Do it.
do it.
Get the word.
I don't think we have to be that strict.
Okay. All right, so that's part of the $4.5 million. And now the question that I have is, then there's $400,000 for the network. Does the network play a role in identifying the statewide person?
So
We have not had that conversation. I assume that the statewide CAP person would be the coordinator with all statewide partners, including the network, but wouldn't it be an employee
Okay,
of?
but in terms of the hiring of this coordinator or director, that's done by the CAPS, so to bring the CAPS together. Okay,
Yes.
I get that. And then the network is already together. Single network, so they don't need that. Okay. All right, that's helpful. All right. Is there anything else in here that you'd like to share with us at this point?
I don't think I have any highlights to share, except that as you look at it, I think that we've been thoughtful in our approach and really looking at the most efficient ways and what we need individually in our regions to build capacity to lift up a program that we're really excited to do. I think that we want to make those changes to improve outcomes for everyone and be efficient in our practice as well.
Okay. So I've noticed that in your titles across the top, you talk about leadership planning committee. That's not the council, though, but the leadership planning committee would work together to bring the council together, the regional council together.
Correct.
Okay. All right, just want to be clear on language. Identification. Then there was a question that Senator Douglas has for you, which isn't related to the budget necessarily. Maybe eventually could be, but so are there other questions about this spreadsheet that committee members have? But this is good. This offers some clarity on what you presented to us last Friday. Very helpful. Okay, so Senator Douglas does have a question on, for Jenna, I think, on the how furniture.
Hi, Jenna. Good to see you. Very, very, very small question for you. In your experience with NECA and the CAPS, how much do you rely or how much do you seek out volunteers for assisting with all of your programs, and especially with homelessness? And how much do you seek out with donations for clothing, furniture, office supplies, stuff like that? The reason I ask that is because I'm considering right now and talking with the chair on a very, very small inclusion in the intent language of the bill, to ask that the CAPS, where to the extent possible, seek out donations of volunteers and furniture. I don't think it's very controversial. So if you have anything to say on that.
So we, all 5 of us, do everything you just named. We fundraise, we do donation drives, we have a volunteer protocol and recruitment efforts. We also report out as part of our organizational standards on how many volunteer hours we capture as an agency. So we actually record volunteer hours and we do report out on them in our community services block grant monitoring. So we incorporate volunteers, I think, differently in each agency. At NECA, we use volunteers heavily in our food shelves and in our shelter doing meals. So, and in our thrift store. So we certainly have all places and spaces. I think all 5 of our websites have a certain area that directs volunteers also to how to get involved.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, and then donations as part of that. Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
All right, thank you for that. This has been a good help. And what we're going to do now is we're gonna jump back into the bill now that we have Ledge Council back.
Okay.
And, we'll deal with that.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Jenna. You're welcome to stay on. We may have other questions going along if you're available.
I am. That's great. Thank you. I'll just turn the camera off and be here.
All right.
Thanks.
So Katie, thank you for coming back. And we are on page. Page 24. So this is the. I just, so you know, Nolan and I talked in between down on lines 14 and 15. Where it says including estimated fiscal year 27 budget, and then it says requests, and I'm just saying estimated fiscal year budget. Comma.
Where are you? I'm sorry.
Anyway, we'll get to it.
Okay.
I'll bring it up again.
Okay. Should I keep moving through section 7? Yep, okay. So we're transitioning now. We're looking at the needs assessments that the providers will be sending along to the policy committees and appropriations committees. So the first of these reports comes on January 15th. The next one comes April 1st. Maybe I'll just go through all of the language. Prior to enactment of VHART on July 1, 2026, a statewide organization serving households experiencing or that have experienced domestic or sexual violence and community action agencies shall conduct initial needs assessment in accordance with the process developed in section 6A1 of this act. On or before January 15th, the community action agencies shall submit one comprehensive progress report, and the statewide organization shall submit a separate report to the House, to the various policy committees and appropriation committees, including an estimated fiscal year 27 budget request.
So there, that's the comment. Nolan, did you want to comment on that?
Just line 15, get rid of word requests. They're not requesting money. They're providing budgets. And especially this contract.
Or just put a comma after budget, that will help. Take that.
Well,
Okay.
or grants, but it's.
Yeah.
Estimated fiscal year 2027 budgets.
So maybe that's usually.
What? Budgets or budget? Budgets.
They would mention that it would, to grants, and it is a request. So I don't know, I think it's fine to leave it out. It's just still, I don't know. We can skip it for now. So.
I think we're getting close to needing a final draft, so,
Right.
um,
So the language has to be clear. So it's, they're in 26, they're
how
giving
about proposal?
proposal.
Will that work?
That will.
Budget proposal?
Yeah.
Okay. 2027 budget proposal, estimated costs of administering the program and an analysis of any barriers to generating additional shelter and permanent housing in the region. On or before April 1, the community action agency shall submit one comprehensive report detailing the results of each region's needs assessment and implementation plans. And the statewide organization shall submit a separate report, which shall not exceed the budgetary estimates provided in the progress report. So should we also call that proposal, the budgetary proposals?
Well, I'm sure.
Go ahead.
I don't understand what that sentence means. Shall not exceed budgetary estimates provided in the prior report.
This is actually based on a recommendation you made that they can't exceed their length at that point in the budget process, they can't exceed what they proposed in January. So that's trying to capture
That was
that.
me. I said that.
You said that.
Yes, you did.
Well, I'm making no sense to myself. Okay.
So we just don't want them to go over what happened in January.
Yes.
Is that okay with you?
I don't get your bill.
Okay.
I'm just flagging stuff.
Okay, so how about shall not exceed the budgetary proposals provided in the January 1, 2026 progress report? Does that help make it clear?
Yeah.
Or
Okay. Budgetary
it's
proposals
a
provided in January. January 15, 2026.
That doesn't make sense. And the statewide organization shall submit a separate report which does not exceed the budgetary estimates. The report shouldn't exceed budget.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
there's
modifier. The number shouldn't be more than the budgetary. What's in the report
okay,
should,
okay.
okay, this is, I had to take remedial grammar, so I have a problem with it.
Statewide organization shall
I
submit
used to tell my
a
kids,
report,
I type their stuff.
We got two people here, so go ahead, Amy, then Lily.
We might be gonna say the same
Yeah.
thing. Amy Schollenberger for VCAP. I believe this April 1st report is meant to be submitted by DCF because our understanding is that DCF needs to sign off on the implementation plan that the CAPS submit to DCF. It's not that that the CAPS wouldn't do all the work, but just that DCF would have the final say.
So the language has been in the bill for a long time.
I know, but
Yes.
that
Community
last piece changed recently, I think.
I don't know, so I'm looking at Lily.
Well,
I don't think-
again, Lily Sojourner, with the Office of Economic Opportunity, I think I was similar to maybe what Amy's doing, is trying to take a step back of like, what does the committee want in January versus what do we want to have happen in April? And so is it I don't know if I have
So the
language
first-
suggestions further than that, but I think to Amy's point, right, like if one set of things was happening in January, right, we wouldn't need them to necessarily happen again in April.
That's not my point.
Okay,
I don't, if you look, let's just take a step forward on page 25 and you'll see additional things listed for the April report that go beyond what's in the January report.
Can I
Help.
jump in and, I might be wrong, but the original conversation was that this committee was interested in having a preliminary needs assessment before VHARS took place from the community action agencies.
It helps with BAA, it helps with budget.
And then the conversation was that the community action agencies could not complete that regional needs assessment before April. And so this committee then said, well, let's have a progress report prior to that in January. So what this language is trying to capture is the preliminary progress, the progress report and the preliminary needs assessment comes in January. The final needs assessment comes in April, but because of the budget process, any money that is proposed in January cannot be exceeded when the final comes in April.
So if we put period after the green report and then say the state records report, the budget in the report shall not, or the budget request in the budget plan proposal shall not exceed the budgetary estimates.
I could do that. I was also thinking of just moving reference to the network before the community action agencies, and I think that could help. So that on or before April 1, the statewide organization shall submit I don't know, its own report. The community action agency shall submit one comprehensive report detailing results of each region's needs assessment and implementation plans, which shall not exceed budgetary proposals provided in the January 15, 2026 progress.
That,
That's better.
Better.
Or
that's
shall
what,
not include
yes.
budgetary proposals that exceed,
Shall not,
include budgetary proposals that exceed.
This is gonna be fun
Trying to
next
word
year.
this, so,
that exceed,
he's just gonna crunch the numbers for what the words say.
that exceed those provided, and that's maybe extra wordy. Okay,
Those estimates.
okay,
Okay,
are we okay on that?
it sounds good. That's good. We'll see what happens.
Okay, and then we have the same criteria that is going to be codified. You have the amendments in Title III to the Community Action Agencies, no changes here. And that brings us to the appropriations, which we've already looked at. The
On
intent,
page,
oh,
30.
Yep.
We skip over to 30.
31 is the intent language that we looked at earlier. And then section 11 is the transition for the HOP funding. As part of the fiscal year 28 budget presentation, the department shall present a plan for transitioning HOP funding and duties to PR.
This is the place where people have to really get together. Right now, I know there's such divisiveness out there about this. I know that's the case. I know the program worked beautifully, and maybe that is a decision that's made, but people have to work together to figure out how to pull all this money and decision making and administration into a good place. Hi.
Hi.
Okay.
I guess this is just a check-in. There were a few places yesterday where I flagged questions that you wanted to come back to. I don't know if now is the right time to come back to those.
Yeah, we do. I
questions.
think that's a good idea, and I know that Senator Douglas had some suggestions going through. So, Katie, let's start with what you have, and then we'll go back through the bill. We have an hour. We don't have to do 237 today. So we lost almost 45 minutes this morning, so we're gonna have to 237 may have to shift over to another time. So
Okay,
want to do that. This one is our priority.
okay. So pages 6 and 7, the issue came
Let
up.
us get there.
Yep, I apologize.
No, don't. Page 6 and 7. Okay. You have a question. Bring it up when you're ready.
Okay.
Oh, this is the definition that is in Title 18 and here.
Oh, that's not what I was thinking about.
What were you thinking about?
The Regional Advisory Council.
Oh, good.
There was
Yeah.
a conversation whether to move the continuums of care from may to shall.
Yeah.
And that was flagged for future discussion.
I don't, it says I have internet, but it hasn't told me it can't load a file.
Okay, so yeah, so I thought we had decided to leave it
Okay,
as May on the 2nd.
okay. Yeah. I believe it. The next question was a question I raised on page 9. 2205. And that question, so this is the language on the authorization process and the reauthorization review. Right now, this only pertains to the community action agencies. And my question was, should the network be referenced here? Is this an entity that would be authorized and that there's going to be a review, or is this, or is the network, is there going to be kind of like a separate contract with the network that's outside of this process? If so, this language could probably stand as it is, but I was hoping for a little more clarity on
So
that.
it stands as it is if the network is outside.
if the department plans to just sort of have a direct contract with the network and not have all of this language around, what does it mean to be authorized? What criteria have to be met to be authorized? Should there be a reauthorization review at a certain period with corrective actions? If that is something that needs to be codified, we maybe should think about integrating that here, but if the department is going to sort of deal with the network separately with the direct contract that is outside of this authorization process, then we don't have to make any changes here.
I'm looking at the agency, at the department for comment on this one.
I mean, they probably would have a separate agreement template because their responsibilities are slightly different.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a fair question in terms of you could run into some of the same challenges with any agency of not being able to fulfill responsibilities. And so I think,
And services offered, I mean, then you've got this core services, et cetera, et cetera.
The network right now is required to provide the core services. They're dealt with in a separate. Yeah, but I guess if you do decide to integrate the network into this section, you have to think through that this list of what a community action agency has to do to be authorized is probably going to look different for the network. So what criteria would you
So
apply?
this begins in July 26th, and we've so the reauthorization review for the caps, that this section goes into effect in July. So then there is time here for consideration of how the network would be reauthorized. I don't know how to do that right here, right now.
I don't know if there is a way to add language earlier on when you first talk about the network,
Authorization?
to kind of just have a separate section for them that's maybe a little bit smaller, but that again speaks to the same, that if they for some reason are not able to fulfill these statewide responsibilities, the department then has a way to find someone else.
I think what I do is add it here as a new A, just the way we did with the like setting up the program where the network is the first addressed.
Okay, I think,
And then we wouldn't be listing criteria. It would just be kind of more cursory.
Well, yeah, that's the network could chime in.
Take this.
I don't know if the network is listening in, but if the network is listening in, it would be good to have you sign on to Zoom ASAP.
right, because I think, the
Or you
department
could reach out to the network on our behalf at this point.
yes, I can, Katie, do you want me to view into that communication with them or?
So Katie, you're suggesting a new A here?
Yeah, I think what I'll do is sort of renumber the whole section and I'll have everything that is currently on this page will be one giant section B. And it will be re-lettered appropriately, and then I'll add a new A that just applies to the network, and it will be condensed, and it will not have all of these criteria for authorization.
Okay. Does that make sense?
I think so. I mean, I think that for all of this, right, we want to make sure that in worst case scenario situations, if an entity is not able to provide some service, right, that we then have a process to address it or have an alternative. And so, yes, I do. Thank you for raising this. I think it makes sense to make sure we have at least some type of parallel process, albeit maybe less.
Okay. Let's try that.
Okay.
And this goes into effect July 26th, so there's certainly opportunity and time to come back with any further recommendations. But we'll look at that language. Okay. Anything else?
I mentioned my stuff a second ago, back office, the regional, where.
Page.
Oh, right, page 6, sorry. Uh, there was some comments yesterday to Senator Cox and myself on the, the diversity section. Would be possible to include the words to the extent possible.
Where's that be? Page 6.
I'm there, but where?
It's in the development of the regional, council.
Mhm.
And it says membership reflect growing diversity among the Vermonters.
Oh, right,
That
yeah.
has a list there.
Yeah.
Might be some places that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what was it to the specify?
It's not possible or something.
Senator Lyons,
Yeah,
did you see, from Jean Montrose, a couple suggestions?
from who?
Jean
Yeah, Jean
Montrose.
Montrose from Addison County.
Oh,
Yeah, she had 2 suggestions.
when did that come in?
It's on our today.
Yes, last night came in.
So someone will have to bring that up as we go through the
Yeah.
bill, but
She just said on page 6, line 20. She said she would like if you guys could add including all current top guarantees. Grants.
okay. Yep. Shall include organization services in the region. The department shall, this is the shall section,
And then-
so I think that raises a bigger question, so the question is including all HOP recipients under the shall,
Grantees.
and that probably falls under the may at this point. If you want us.
Are they already organizations providing services in the region?
Yeah, they are.
She just wrote this. So.
She wanted to have them mentioned explicitly. Yeah, so if they're already in. Both, they're actually in both places. Okay. Okay.
And then the only other suggestion she had was page 7, line 1.
So hold
Yeah.
the thought, we've got it down now, and we'll come back to it as we go through the bill. Is there other places?
She had 2 suggestions.
Yeah, the other was page.
What was the other one?
It was page 7, line 1, going from may to shall.
Oh, yeah, we've decided that one.
Yeah.
I know. Everybody wants to change everything all the time.
Oh, I agree, yeah. I'm just reading her thing.
God, no, appreciate it. Thank you. And I did hear from her. I told her we're doing a work in progress on this one. Okay. Is there something else, Senator? But
Bless you.
I think as we go through the bill, let's pick up some of the suggestions that you might
Well, there
have.
was the intent language, are we on second?
The intent language,
Yeah,
I don't know where we are. Are we
So,
starting from the-
do you have anything else, any other specific,
Those were the questions. I
Those are the
flagged from
ones,
survey.
okay.
Yep.
yes, so now we have time to go through the whole bill as it currently is and some of the suggestions for change. We are past the time for new ideas. We're here with DCF and OEO bringing us some language get to Katie so that we can see it tomorrow. Okay, and then as we go through the bill, folks around the table will come up with ideas and we'll have a conversation. And that will include a conversation about the HOP grant recipients that we just heard. So let's do that. And so we're starting with, well, findings.
Okay.
My suggestion is, we skip and come back to findings. I know those. They don't go into statutes.
Should we start with legislative intent?
Yeah.
Okay.
On page,
3. It is the intent of the General Assembly that unsheltered homelessness be eliminated and that homelessness in Vermont be rare, brief, and not reoccurring. It is the intent of the General Assembly that VHARTH is a step towards ensuring that homelessness be reduced in Vermont and interim shelter opportunities be available to provide a stable pathway to permanent housing for all Vermonters experiencing homelessness, including safe shelter options for individuals living in unsheltered homelessness. Vermont increased supply of emergency shelter as well as permanent supportive housing that meets the specific needs of individuals. That community components of all shelter types are integrated in a systemic manner. That time limits, night by night shelter, relocation between interim shelter sites and other disruptions of housing stability be eliminated to the extent possible. That Vermont's emergency housing statutes, rules, policies, procedures, and practices be modeled on housing first principles where appropriate. The non-congregate shelter be used to the extent possible, and that Vermont reduce reliance on the use of hotel and motel rooms to shelter participating households and expand the use of emergency shelters throughout the state for this purpose. Subsection C, it is the intent of the General Assembly that VHARD replaces the provision of emergency housing through the General Assistance Program beginning in fiscal year 27 and the HOP program beginning in fiscal year 28.
So I know that the administration would like us to substitute that program in like 6. I know that. Now that there's a strong interest in changing that GA program. But this is, given all the structural and functional things going on in the bill, I don't see how that's possible. Thank you. I mean, if you guys can bring us some solid recommendation to make it so, but I'm not sure we can move any quicker than this year. Well, if we could, as provisions are put in place, there will be a transition away from, I mean, is that language that we here?
A transition away from, I mean, at this point, the budget has closed.
Budget has flown.
And the budget has GA emergency housing in it for
I
fiscal
know,
year
we can't call that. So, Commissioner, do you want to say a word?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I would say that the administration is interested in moving certain things forward in GA in FY26. As you stated, there is language in the budget about GA in FY26. We might have some suggestions on a few things, very narrow set of things that we'd like to see in GA in FY26 that could be added to the bill. It was in a previous draft that we put together. So we can get you that language overnight for you.
Well, I know the language goes to the governor's executive order, I believe, and that it's not something that we can consider at this point, given where the budget is.
Yeah, not specifically to the executive order, but to the ability to prioritize populations. That's not possible under the GA language that's in the budget right now. It adheres to the rules adopted by LCAR, which I know you're very familiar
with that.
from March, but also to those issues that I spoke of earlier of verification of residency, homelessness, and income.
Okay, quite a time to have to go back and look at it, but I do know it's important to the administration. Go ahead, Senator.
I know it's important to the administration, but it just doesn't make sense to have unrealistic timelines. We're dealing with the same thing in with, the education transformation. Let's base all of this in reality and not an ideal that can't be managed.
I understand.
Just to be clear, this is about DCF's administration of GA and FY26, wouldn't have anything to do with the community action agencies.
Okay, so send this language out to the committee members and to Katie, and we'll look at it, but there's no guarantee here, Brandy.
Of course. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Right. I mean, we're not going to do a whole lot of around the room, but if you have a quick comment.
Just a quick comment, just building on comments yesterday around number 7 in terms of reducing the reliance on using hotels and motels. and
Yeah.
whether it would make more sense to say to more effectively integrate the use of motels and hotels into Vermont's homelessness response infrastructure. Because in the near term, hotels may be the more cost efficient and effective tool than building more shelter, which costs much more.
That is one perspective, but right now our goal is to reduce dependence. And going forward, we might find that we have to change this. But this has been an ongoing issue for us ever since ARPA funds were available. We get it. I hear what you're saying. Where are we?
Okay, we are on page 4. We're starting with the language in section 3. This is the creation of the new VHearth chapter, beginning July 1, 2025. This doesn't mean that VHearth takes effect yet in substance. What this does is just sets out the chapter and then definitions in order to make the regional advisory councils take effect a year early. So we have the creation of the chapter, we have the short title, we have the purpose. The purpose being to replace the provision of emergency housing through the general assistance program. And use funds and resources previously attributed to this program is the change we decided on yesterday. And any other identified state and federal.
Hold on a second, because Senator Douglas had a comment on the intent section and we flew over it.
Okay.
Yeah, the donation stuff, I believe that she has language already that maybe that emails are okay.
So wait, so we
I don't
need to
think
know
that
what
was
that
an
is. We
intent.
just plop it in.
That's in the section about what community action agency has to do to be authorized.
Oh, okay, so my intention
Okay,
was that it was gonna be the intent, but I'm also fine with it being there is in that section as well, because they
Okay.
already are doing
Doesn't
that.
fit here.
So that's fine with me, if that's where you had it.
okay,
apologize.
I misunderstood. So,
No,
I'm hoping-
I actually like your suggestion better. so.
okay. Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, so we'll hold that thought. We'll come back to it when we
Okay.
get there. So we're on VHearth.
We're on VHearth.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to track along with yesterday's changes. Okay. And any other identified state and federal monies to fund VHearth established in this chapter. And 2, reduce reliance on the use of hotel and motel rooms to shelter participating households and expand the use of emergency shelters throughout the state.
Maybe there's a word we can put in here that would satisfy Frank's comment, which is reduce reliance on the inefficient use. And so, because that's what we're talking about, right?
Okay.
And so there are uses in here that are more
So I
efficient.
put it in
So
both
if we put
places.
the word inefficient use, that opens up a conversation. Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Sometimes I listen.
Okay. Shall I keep moving? Okay. Definitions. As used in this chapter, at risk of homelessness means precariously housed without sufficient income, resources, or support to prevent homelessness. 2, community action agency means an agency designated pursuant to Title III. Community-based shelter means a shelter that meets the department standards for the operation of shelters. Department means CCF. Extreme weather event means extreme hot or cold temperatures. For weather events such as hurricane, flooding, or blizzards that create hazardous conditions for outdoor habitation by humans. Homeless means lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Facing imminent loss of primary nighttime residence. Fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence or otherwise defined as homeless under federal law. Household means an individual and any dependents with whom the individual is legally responsible. For domiciled in Vermont as evidenced by an intent to dwell in Vermont and to return to Vermont if temporarily absent, coupled with an act or acts consistent with that intent. Household includes individuals who reside together as one economic unit, including those who are married, parties to a civil union, or unmarried. Unsheltered homelessness means sleeping in a location not designed for or ordinarily used as a regular sleeping accommodation.
Okay, so the definition household comes from,
It is not directly quoted from, it's based on language in Title 33. I'll have to look up the exact subchapter 2,
I
like
looked
whatever
last
chapter
night, but I forgot.
it's in the Green Mountain Care subchapter or subchapter something. And it defines, it's part of a definition for Vermont resident. It was pulled from the definition of Vermont resident.
Okay. I know there are a lot of comments on this, and we have talked about it, and we have a weather later on that gets us to this again. But so keep going.
Regional advisory councils. Each community action agency shall convene a regional advisory council whose membership reflects the growing diversity among Vermonters. And then we'll add the language, intent, to the extent possible.
Yeah.
Including individuals from Black, Indigenous, and persons of color, as well as with regards to socioeconomic status, geographic location, gender, sexual identity, and disability status. Members of the advisory, oh my gosh, I'm getting so many emails. It keeps popping up on my screen. Members of an advisory council shall include organizations providing services in the region, the department and representatives of the agency, and each department of the agency as needed. A regional advisory council may collaborate with individuals with lived experience of homelessness, community partners, state partners, housing providers, local housing coalitions, statewide homelessness organizations, providers of coordinated entry, continuums of care, faith-based organizations, and even municipalities and the region served by the Community Action Agency.
So I'm going back to the question that we heard from Middlebury about including HOP grant recipients. And if we do that, then we have to put DAs and SSAs and all a number of other organizations. So I think if we just leave it, they're included. Include organizations providing services in the region that it, I think you're not really, that's there.
Subsection B, each regional advisory council shall provide advice and recommendations to the Community Action Agency and its region regarding the design and implementation of the program. The work of each regional advisory council shall be informed by regional planning commissions, housing targets. Each regional advisory council shall meet on at least a quarterly basis. The regional advisory council shall have the legal and technical support of the department.
Senator Lulick, you had a question.
I have a question. It's an unfortunate one, but I will ask it. On page 6 of the bottom, when we're talking about your regional advisory councils, which I know are their own thing, but does including the language around, demographics, does that make us more potentially vulnerable to federal cuts? Having that language explicitly here?
Who can answer?
I don't know how I would answer that question. Yeah.
Well, if we're trying to make it representative of the community and to the extent possible.
Right.
So I don't know that you can argue with that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Keep going.
Okay. Okay, now we've got into the portion of BHAR, that's effective July 1, 2026. So we're not underlining the name of this chapter because it will have already been in place for a year as of July 1, 2026. The definitions will all be in place, but we're modifying one definition of Community Action Agency to reflect that it could be, in this instance, an entity that's authorized by the department to fulfill the duties of a community action agency under this chapter. And then we have new language, new 2204. BHAR is established in the department to provide services to households that are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless to the extent funds exist. The department shall select and contract with a statewide organization that has population-specific service experience to provide or cause to be provided supportive services and shelter to those households that are experiencing or that have experienced domestic or sexual violence. All other participating households shall be served by or through a community action agency responsible for a geographically distinct region of the state. Community action agencies participating in the program shall provide or cause to be provided supportive services, extreme weather event shelter, and emergency shelter. Okay. I'm just looking at this language in one, we were just talking about how do we authorize the network, and right here in one, we have select and contract. So I'm just gonna borrow this language and put it in both places. So if there's any question about how the network is.
Smart.
How the authorization works, that's where I'll borrow the language from. So it'll be a little repetitive, but it will be in both places.
Okay.
So here is the authorization process section. So there'll be a new A that will, borrow language from the previous section and from some of the CAP specific language in this section. And then this A will be renumbered to be a B1. The department shall authorize a community action agency to serve or cause to be served households that are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless in a geographically distinct region of the state, if it meets the criteria in this section. If a community action agency cannot fulfill its responsibilities under this chapter, the department shall work with other community action agencies or other appropriate community entities to ensure that there is not a gap in services in a community action agency's region. Subsection B will be subdivision B2. Community action agency providing or causing to provide services in accordance with this chapter will have existing or planned infrastructure to support households in the region, including an established leadership team, a human resources staff, the ability to receive grant funding and issue subgrants, the ability to meet the department's reporting requirements, including having a past history of reporting compliance, the capacity to perform the services required pursuant to 2206 of this section. Should I call that core services to be consistent?
Yeah. Core services, right?
Because we've changed.
Yeah, I think that probably makes a lot of sense. Be consistent.
Subdivision 4, any outcome measures established by this chapter. Remember, this is a placeholder because you're getting a report back on outcome measures. And you contemplated some point in the future adding a section specific to outcome measures once you have that report back. Subdivision 5, community connections with other providers in the region, including local housing coalitions, housing providers, providers of coordinated entry, continuums of care, faith-based organizations, and providers of services to individuals who are older Vermonters, individuals who have disabilities, substance use disorder, or a mental health condition, individuals re-entering the community after incarceration, individuals transitioning from care and custody of the commissioner for DCF, and families with children, and the ability to provide plain language communications to households receiving services. So those are the authorization criteria. And then we have not less than every 3 years, the department shall conduct a reauthorization review of each community action agency providing or causing to provide services pursuant to this topic. An organization may be subject to corrective actions by the department. I'm gonna lose my battery.
We'll start charging it.
I could use that one, but I just don't know if the board will reach.
I'll bring it over. Look at it.
Oh,
So you want
are you running out?
There you go.
I do, thank you. I
No,
don't
wrong
think
one.
that's the wrong one, and we have one here though. Thank you.
Okay,
That
so I
one.
already plugged in.
I appreciate it.
What about this one?
And now I'm dead.
No, I don't. This one does,
No, again.
No,
It's very specific.
this does my cell
Have you tried CPR?
phone. My cell phone.
I think that's where we are right now.
Something done good.
So I lost my last line.
Shut down.
So I was getting CPR at that road.
Sorry.
Sorry. That's right here. There's one under here.
Thank you. Sorry.
Traceability.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, I think people working from our operation. Thank you. Around 10, we just got to subsection C.
Sorry, where did we get to?
We got to subsection C on page 10.
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, I'm already on Zoom and everything. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, okay.
Thanks.
Now listen, every 3 years, the department shall conduct a reauthorization review of each community action agency, providing or causing to provide services pursuant to this chapter. An organization may be subject to corrective actions by the department if within the constraint of appropriated resources, it no longer meets the requirements in subsection B of this section, or has failed to adequately meet the needs of households in its region that are homeless or risk of homelessness. Lack of compliance may result in the department deciding not to reauthorize the community action agency. The department may review community action agency performance between reauthorization reviews and progress on any required corrective actions.
but remember, this is language that was agreed to by the CAPS and AHS. So if we do anything with it, we'll have to have them.
Just wondering if we're losing that clause, progress on any required action, corrective action. So I'm just wondering, flipping the order of the sentence.
Okay,
Let me think it through.
so.
I'll just flag it for myself.
I review community
I won't
action
substantively change anything.
between and progress on any, so they're just looking at what the corrections are from the last time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm wondering if I should say the department may review progress on any previously required corrective actions or community action performance between authorization reviews.
well, they're reviewing community action agency performance and progress on corrective action. You think through.
Okay. Then we get to the VHART Core Services. A pertains to the network. The department shall enter into an agreement with a statewide organization with population-specific experience serving households that are experiencing or have experienced domestic and sexual violence. The organization shall provide or cause to be provided various shelter and case management services that support households. And then in subsection B, the support.
You want to ask the commissioner a question about that last sentence?
I think it's more of a grammar question than a substance.
Okay.
Don't ask to be done, sorry.
Commissioner, how are you at grammar? No.
Not great.
We'll leave that to Katie.
I think not great was improper grammar.
So, yeah.
In subsection B, each community action agency shall offer a cause to be offered in collaboration with community partners. Each of the following services within those regions. Supportive services, including intake assessments and services for diversion from homelessness, which shall include regional intake shelters, household needs assessments, individualized household plans to address identified needs, assistance obtaining and retaining housing, including financial assistance, navigation to other services and supports, including economic benefits, peer supported services, landlord-tenant outreach, education, and conflict resolution, housing navigation services, referral to healthcare assistance, including treatment for, the various parties that we're working on, IJ&K, have sent some proposed language.
Oh, good.
So if it works for you, I can play with the language and integrate it into the next draft.
Please.
Okay.
It wasn't navigation too?
It was IJ&K. They combined it all into one.
Okay.
Okay. Well, look, yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Advocacy, progress monitoring, and interventions. So that's it for the list of supportive services in subdivision 2. The operation of extreme weather event shelters, which may include time-limited congregate accommodations, and may be provided through agreements with municipalities or other entities, utilizing available data and considering geographic access to prioritize funding for this purpose. And The operation of emergency shelters in a manner, the operation of emergency shelters in a manner that builds upon the federally required community planning process and prioritizes households and needs of services of an emergency shelter, which may include community-based shelters, temporary use of hotel and motel rooms, lease agreements for full or partial use of an existing building, need-specific shelter arrangements, master grant leases, the development of shelter capacity, or other arrangements or combinations of arrangements that comply with the intent of this chapter. Okay. 2207, use of hotel and motel rooms. It is the intent of the General Assembly to decrease reliance on hotel and motel rooms for emergency housing. Annually, as shelter capacity increases in each region of the state, the use of hotel and motel rooms for emergency housing and that region shall decrease. Annually, as part of the department's budget presentation, the department shall set goals for increased housing capacity, including shelter beds, permanent supportive housing, and permanent affordable housing, in addition to proposed corresponding decreases in the use of hotel and motel rooms. The department shall provide data pertaining to the percentage of increased shelter capacity from the previous fiscal year in each region and how that increase impacts the corresponding hotel and motel room usage for emergency housing in each region pursuant to this subsection for the purpose of informing regional planning and expectations. Subsection P. Hotels and motels are used to provide emergency shelter pursuant to this chapter. The motel and hotel operator shall comply with program rules and the following other rules. Subsection C. Annually, the department shall propose hotel and motel rates as part of its budget presentation for approval by the General Assembly. A community action agency shall not pay or cause to be paid with state monies a per room per night basis that exceeds the rate approved by the General Assembly. Subsection D, if a hotel or motel is being utilized, a community action agency shall enter into agreements for the use of blocks of hotel and motel rooms and negotiate the conditions of use for those blocks, including access for providers of case management or other supportive services. We're going to break out this strategic.
You're gonna have a subdivision 3 there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then 2, prioritize the use of hotel and motel room agreements over individual per room for night hotel motel room use unless it's not appropriate to a household's needs. Okay, moving on, duties of the department. The department and the Agency of Human Services shall have statewide responsibility for meeting the intent of the chapter, including statewide planning, system development, and the involvement of all of the agency's departments. For the purpose of providing administrative oversight and monitoring of the program established in this chapter, the department shall maintain guidance regarding when extreme weather event shelter shall be operated, including flexibility for regional weather conditions, and maintain a website with the locations of all extreme weather event shelters.
Did you have something? So.
Keep going or?
Did we have a comment in here about? Adequacy. Meeting needs. Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, good. Get it.
Okay. Include as part of any review of a community action agency required pursuant to 3 VSA 2059, the community action agency's ability to perform the requirements of this chapter. Consult with the community action agencies and statewide organizations serving households that are experiencing or that have experienced domestic or sexual violence to develop appropriate resource allocations and methods for adjustment that take into account available data, the presence of community-based providers, and customary resource allocation methods, economic indicators, rate of homelessness, rental vacancy rates, and other variables, as appropriate. Annually distribute funding to each community action agency and the statewide organization serving households that are experiencing or that have experienced domestic and sexual violence using the allocation formula developed in pursuant to subdivision A of the subdivision B3. Or if the department and community action agencies agree to disperse a joint allocation for all community action agencies, which the community action agencies shall determine how to distribute amongst themselves. 4, provide support and technical assistance to the community action agencies, other community partners, and the statewide organizations serving households that are experiencing or that have experienced domestic and sexual violence. Identify specific administrative resources that could be transitioned to community operations. Develop and maintain standards for the core services listed in section 2206 of this chapter, including the operation of community-based shelters. And lastly, adopt rules pursuant to 3 VSA chapter 25 in consultation with the community action agencies and network as appropriate for the implementation of this chapter, including accommodations for individuals with a disability.
Okay, so this is being implemented
July 1/26.
26, and then rules are promulgated after that. Is it any intent on the part of the department, or the agency to promulgate rules? Looking at Commissioner Winters.
Commissioner Vickers, Mr.
Looking at the
asking-
rule, writing of rules on page 16, that is, will go into effect in July 26. That will implement this. There, is the agency already thinking about rules, or the rules will be informed by the work that the CAPS and the regional councils are doing? I'm just saying, I know how long rules take.
Several months, right?
Huh?
Right, they take several months.
They do, a long time. When you do have the authority for emergency rules, you got it all started. No, no authority.
They don't have authority for that. One thing I'm thinking about though is there's sometimes language, in the effective date section that says, however, rulemaking can begin before the section takes effect.
Let's do that.
And then that allows you to start rulemaking to be in place.
That's really good, because there's a whole public process, everybody's in on it, and I think that in the meanwhile, we get information to inform the rules.
That would be great. Thanks for.
Yeah, no, let's do it. I don't want to run into the rule problem.
The next section is regional planning and needs assessment. So just to sort of reiterate where we are, there is a initial needs assessment process. This language that is being codified is an ongoing needs assessment process that happens every 3 years. So as part of the plan, required every 3 years pursuant to 3 VSA 3904, and the federally required planning and needs assessment for the continuums of care, the Community Action Agency shall develop a regional needs assessment and planning process in collaboration with community and state partners for use in each Community Action Agency's region to inform future plans addressing housing and homelessness in each region of the state. The regional needs assessment and planning process plans shall include addressing progress in reducing the number of households experiencing homelessness in the region, assessing the rate households placed in permanent housing return to homelessness and the underlying reasons, identifying resources developed and utilized in the region to address homelessness and efforts to improve the equitable distribution of these resources in the region, reporting the rate of household participation with coordinated entry processes and case management services, identifying system gaps and the funding needed to address those gaps, including periodic inflationary adjustments, and utilizing data, including Vermont's point-in-time count, coordinated entry results, and community conversations. Every 3 years, each community action agency shall submit plans developed pursuant to this section to the department in a format prescribed by the department Upon receipt of the plan, the department shall consolidate the results of these reports and submit the consolidated report to the policy committees. So that's just the community action agencies. This is not planning language with regard to the network. And then 2210 reporting requirements. On or before the last day of every third month, the department shall submit a report in consultation with the community action agencies and the statewide organizations serving households experiencing domestic or sexual violence to the policy committees and joint fiscal, addressing the number of households served through the program by household size, eligibility category if applicable, region, service provider, and type of service, changes in shelter capacity since the previous reporting period, the number of diversions made during the previous reporting period, the number of households whose intake assessment indicated a potential need for services from each department within the agency, the number of beds available for emergency housing in each region of the state with separate reporting on the number of beds available in nursing homes and residential care homes for individuals whose screening indicates they could meet the clinical criteria for those settings, and the number of emergency beds available for individuals whose screening indicates they do not meet clinical criteria, including low barrier shelters, beds for youth, and beds for individuals who have experienced domestic or sexual violence.
So wait there. So I think Senator Douglas, you had your hand up.
I think maybe, somewhere in there under subsection 1, can we include the language, like the percentage or the number of households being served by the department that are either that are employed either part-time or full-time?
Say that
That are employed either part-time or full-time. You know, if this program is a measure of getting people out of homelessness and into permanent shelters, or sorry, permanent housing, I think it's useful to have that information as a kind of a part of the litmus test for how successful we are in the program. And, you know, if they're getting enough services, are they able to be employed?
I guess it's a question as to whether the CAPS will be capturing that data of full-time or part-time employment.
I don't know the answer. I'm sorry. Probably depends if you mandate.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry, Amy Schollenberger, VCAP. I'm not sure if that would be automatic. I think if you mandate it, they'll have to.
There's a group, I think, that's supposed to be looking at this section and providing new language this afternoon. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
That's DC.
Oh, that's just DCF, okay. I was gonna suggest if it was a wider group that be integrated, but it's just DCF.
Well, you know, I think it's a really good idea because we hear that people are stuck in shelters or hotels and motels and they're working and they can't afford to have rent or pay for a home. So I think this kind of information is important
Okay,
on different levels.
how about I just put employment status?
Yeah, that's good.
Agent employment status, does that work?
Yeah.
Okay,
And obviously I'm not gonna ask for lists of people and what their jobs are, just
We don't want
just
that.
the number of people that were served.
I heard it.
Yeah. Or households.
okay.
Brenda, do you want to say something?
Yeah, Brenda Siegel and Homelessness Vermont. I just wanted to say that if that's gonna be in there, I think also social security, if how many people are on social security income should be in there. Because just that it should be income in general, so that we understand the people that aren't working and that they may not be able to.
Employment or supported through
Employment status,
SSI.
recipients of that,
Can't get too specific.
No.
recipients of that, or SSD.
So the group that's thinking about this afternoon.
SSI or SSDI.
Not that in particular, Madam Chair, the things that, well, we can incorporate that into our conversation.
That would be good. I mean,
Yeah.
whether we do
It's like-
anything with it
the
or
goal is
not,
to-
it's
to
probably.
See how many people are
consider.
employed versus,
Yeah.
and if you have them together, then it'd be impossible, obviously, to be able to tell.
Okay, I was gonna put them as separate items on the list, but now
Yeah.
I'm wondering if just make them a whole. I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
because no, I
Good.
really
Yes, you don't
I
want the,
very much agree with the single,
okay.
that's, I think that's important too.
Okay. We were on 6. The number of households that have been successfully transitioned to permanent housing since the previous reporting period, the types of housing settings in which they have been placed and the supportive services they are receiving in conjunction with their housing, the number of households that may be transitioned to permanent housing in the coming months, any rules and regulations and ordinances that are impeding the timely development of safe, decent, affordable housing in Vermont communities, in order to identify areas in which flexibility or discretion are available. And advise whether the temporary suspension of relevant state rules and local regulations, ordinances, or the adoption or amendment of state rules to facilitate faster and less costly revitalization of existing housing and construction of new units. An inventory of all subgrants issued by the statewide organization serving households experiencing or who have experienced domestic or sexual violence by each community action agency, and gaps in services.
So what I'm gonna suggest is that we stop here and we come back to whatever we have tomorrow morning. Hopefully we'll have
A new draft.
a full new draft. And then we'll go through it again. I think I'm trying to look at my schedule for tomorrow. We do have Michael Grady coming in at 9 to do 238 and vote on that. That won't take long. And then we're going to have H91 the rest of the morning. If we ever do get to 237, we'll do it. But we've got H91 yet tomorrow, full morning. Please don't go to agriculture. I'll try to get to the final place on